Character autonomy is basically, I usually just group it up with cast control. And so it's basically just the side characters doing their own thing outside of the main plot. This own thing can include the protagonist, but usually makes the side character for the situation the protagonist. And so for the sake of a popular example, just imagine if Tony Stark from the Marvel franchise was the protagonist of the entirety of Marvel. And so that means that when you see Peter Parker or the Hulk or Thor having their own movies with its own stories outside of the Avengers and Tony Stark himself, then that is an example of cast autonomy, or character autonomy rather. And so the crucial thing to remember is that with this autonomy is that it really is dependent on the story that you are writing. And so this cannot be said for every story that exists. An example of this would be the Marvel one, where it's actually more of a collection of different stories, and then sometimes these stories can converge, and then this group named the Avengers can be created for tackling this greater threat. And so that movie would be more about the collection of these characters, but after the Avengers or the threat has been eliminated, they go off on their separate ways, and they are their own characters and their own protagonists in their lives. And you can also see this with stories that are more focused on world building, where there is no specific lesson that is being taught unless the world itself has a theme to it. Whether that theme is to have hope or to have no hope, think of grimdark stories in that sense. A series that I would say would not work with the concept of character autonomy would be the Naruto franchise. Or rather, to say that it wouldn't work, but to say that it is not expected to be there, because the story of Naruto is more about understanding others, and then later on, especially your enemies. It is more focused on Naruto himself. It's written like a biography or a chronicle of Naruto's story, similarly to how Alexander the Great's story is told, where it's not necessarily about all the people that also existed within Alexander's time and their importance, but it's more about Alexander's story and how he became great. And so Naruto is the same in that way, where it's about him being the protagonist and understanding others, rather than that being something that is shown by the different members of the cast. And then of course there's stories that take this concept halfway, and I would say that One Piece is an example of this, where both Luffy and the world of One Piece are equally as important. And so following characters' journeys outside of Luffy can still make sense in the One Piece world and the story that is being written, but it wouldn't make sense for a long period of time. Eventually it has to come back to Luffy. That is why I say it's a good midway point. So this basically means that you would be able to watch Shanks' story and his adventures in the pirate world, and you would not necessarily have an issue. While in the Naruto story, following, for example, Rock Lee's story and him trying to become a splendid shinobi would be a massive distraction towards what the themes of Naruto are, and would actually just ruin the story itself, where it might be satisfying to watch that journey of Rock Lee's, and it might just be enjoyable to the readers or the audience in general. But then, on retrospect, people would ask, what was even the point of that? In a story about understanding and Naruto being the protagonist and being the main vehicle where we see the theme being exercised. And so all of this is to say that it is important to have the side character's journey still in some way connect with the overarching themes of the story, if you are going to do it. Let's put it in Naruto again. And so an example of it making sense still with the main themes would be that, imagine if Kiba were to go on a mission about dogs and things of that nature. So you'd still have to encounter something that either serves to deepen the lore and the world building that's of the world of Naruto, and this lore and world building still has to in some way connect with the main theme of the story. And so the story itself could feel like it doesn't have any connection, but then when we step back and see what we have learned from Kiba's journey, we see that it adds to the Naruto world, which goes on to add to its main theme and the message that Kishimoto is trying to tell. Or another way is to say that you are following Kiba and he meets somebody, an enemy that he refuses to understand, and so that causes the situation to get worse rather than better, and that emphasizes what is the main issue with this world. And so if he fixes this problem by understanding the person that he is fighting or is against at that moment, and you see it goes well after that, you see that it would reconnect with the main theme, and then would be another showing off that this is what the story is about. And so since I was just thinking of that two examples off the top of my head, it might have holes in it, but it's to say that that is what I mean by that your exploration of character autonomy away from the protagonist or the main plot still has something to do with the story that you're creating and the purpose of the story that you are creating. And it also shows the difficulty in which to execute this in stories that have a lesson to give, as those stories aren't just about exploring different characters and fully fleshing them out for the sake of fleshing them out, but it is about a specific lesson that needs to be taught or a specific concept that's being explored. And so the story is naturally restrained by that for its own good. And with that, I'll give it over to you. I want to see if you can name any stories where, while it is enjoyable to the audience or the readers, it seems that the story is losing what it is about. And of course, I'm specifically talking about character autonomy. So we're just seeing that the characters are being fleshed out. You're getting a whole, not only flashback, but you can see the future and the adventures of Sakura or something of that nature, and you're enjoying it. So mind you, you are enjoying this, but when you actually think about what the story is actually trying to go for and teaching you, you start to think to yourself, oh, this doesn't make sense. Or do you have any examples of stories where it does have character autonomy, but then you see that all this autonomy is connected to the overarching story and its message? Yes, and with that, I'll see you next time.